Newgrange in Ireland. Built 5,200 years ago, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids. Archaeologists spent centuries calling it as a tomb. Then someone brought a sound meter inside and discovered what the builders actually created. The chamber resonates at specific frequencies, around 95 to 120 Hz. The granite and limestone architecture amplifies these frequencies in ways that affect human neural processing. The Acoustics researcher Paul Devereaux tested it across multiple sites in Europe: Newgrange, Halsaflieni Hypogeum in Malta, prehistoric caves in France. The blueprint repeated everywhere he measured. When you expose human subjects to sound in this frequency range inside these chambers, consistent phenomena emerge. Time gets distorted, emotions get intensified, and there is a sense of presence. The experiences vary between individuals, but enough people report similar effects that the pattern holds across different studies and different sites. The mechanism operates through bone conduction. Low-frequency sound waves penetrate your skull as vibration rather than entering only through your ears. The vibration travels directly into brain tissue. Your brain processes this pathway differently than ordinary auditory input. The sound becomes physical experience rather than something merely heard. At frequencies around 110 Hz, emotional processing centers activate more intensely while analytical regions quiet. People report feeling rather than thinking. The experience becomes visceral, immediate, overwhelming. The analytical mind goes silent. The sensing body takes over. The Mandukya Upanishad describes this state. The fourth, say the wise, is not subjective experience, nor objective experience, nor experience intermediate between these two. It is not simple consciousness, nor is it unconsciousness. It is unperceived, unrelated, incomprehensible, uninferable, unthinkable, and indescribable. It points towards consciousness stripped of its usual processing modes. What remains when thinking stops but awareness continues. These chambers, carved from stone 5,000 years ago without any oscilloscope or frequency meters, no understanding of Hertz or neural processing in modern terms. Yet the dimensions, the materials, the shape of these spaces produce measurable effects when tested with contemporary instruments. The builders worked empirically across generations. Early chambers got built for ritual purposes. Communities gathered inside for ceremonies. They chanted, they drummed, and performed whatever practices their culture maintained. Some spaces created powerful experiences, others felt ordinary. The powerful spaces got remembered, copied, refined over centuries. What survived as sacred sites for thousands of years were the chambers that actually worked. These sites underwent natural selection. The ineffective got abandoned or forgotten. The Hypogeum in Malta demonstrates this at another level. Underground chambers carved into limestone across multiple subterranean levels. When researchers tested the main chamber, they discovered male voices around 110 Hz create standing wave resonance throughout the space. The chamber amplifies that specific frequency dramatically. This is not accidental. The tool marks show intentional shaping. Standing inside while low male voices chant, the entire room vibrates. Your body vibrates. Your skull vibrates with the walls. The sound stops being something you hear and becomes something you feel through your entire physical being. The boundary between your body and the space dissolves into pure vibration. This was consciousness engineering using only stone, geometry, and direct observation of effects. But acoustic properties alone don't explain site selection. The builders weren't choosing random location and then carving resonant chambers. They were selecting specific spots on the landscape first, then enhancing natural properties with architecture. Something drew them to these particular places before construction began. Underground water appears at almost every major site. Stonehenge sits on massive chalk aquifer, water flowing underground through porous chalk layer. The Great Pyramid, positioned over ancient Nile tributaries, now dry but geologically confirmed. Göbekli Tepe on limestone ridge with underground water channels documented by surveys. Newgrange, the same. The Hypogeum, the same. Water flowing through quartz-bearing rock under pressure generates weak electrical current through piezoelectric effect. The pressure on crystalline structure creates measurable change. Underground water moving through right geology produces localized electromagnetic field variation. You can measure it with instruments. Walk across landscape with magnetometer. Most places show Earth's background magnetic field relatively uniform. Then you hit spots where underground water flows through quartz-bearing rock. The readings change with small detectable variations. The Oracle of Delphi provides the clearest example. For 1,000 years, the Pythia sat on a tripod over a fissure in the earth. She inhaled something. She entered trance states. She spoke prophecies that shaped Greek civilization. In 2001, geologists discovered what she was breathing. The Temple of Apollo sits on intersecting geological fault lines. Ethylene gas seeps through limestone fissures. Underground water flows beneath. The specific chemistry of that location, the exact combination of geological factors, produces mild psychoactive effect at the concentrations present. The altered state she experienced was real, generated by geology. What ancient peoples called sacred often corresponded to measurable physical phenomena. The correlation exists too often to be coincidence. Your eyes contained cryptochrome proteins, CRY2. These molecules respond to magnetic fields. We know because researchers at Caltech demonstrated it in 2019. They put human subjects in controlled magnetic field environments and their brain waves changed. Subjects didn't consciously perceive anything, but their neurons responded to field variations. The hardware exists in every human brain. Whether our ancestors could consciously access this information remains unknown. But look at what we've lost. Modern electromagnetic environment bombards constantly. Cell towers, power lines, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. The magnetic noise floor is of orders of magnitude higher than what existed for 99.9% of human history. Hunter-gatherer groups still demonstrate remarkable environmental sensitivity. Kalahari Bushmen tracking animals across bare rock where no physical evidence exists. And Aboriginal Australians finding underwater in desert. They can't explain how, they just know. The Yamna pastoralists moving across Eurasian steppes 5,000 years ago, survival depended on finding water. There were no rivers on the steppes or visible streams. They were just grasslands extending to the horizon. Yet they survived, they thrived, and they eventually conquered Europe. They must have had methods for locating underground water. Some spots felt different. Some locations had qualities that made them significant for reasons they couldn't articulate but reliably detect. When farming peoples built temples, they built on water sources. Practical necessity was prioritized. But these spots also felt right. Something about being there affected experience, made ritual more powerful, and made the presence of their gods more tangible. Then the Yamna came, the warriors with horses and new gods. They conquered the farming peoples, killed the men and took the women, brought their sky god mythology. The genetic evidence is stark. In Britain, the farming peoples who built Stonehenge essentially disappeared from the gene pool. In Spain, male lineages vanished completely. Population replacement happened through violence. But they didn't abandon the sacred sites. They reinterpreted them. The locations were the same but with different explanations. The mother goddess became enemy serpent. The The earth temples became places to honor the sky god. Why keep the locations if the old religion was false? Because the experience at those locations remained powerful regardless of interpretation. The underground water still flowed, the acoustic properties still existed. The geological anomalies still affected perception in consistent ways. The explanatory framework changed, but the underlying phenomenon didn't. This framework repeats throughout history. Conquerors destroy cultures but maintain sacred geography. Christian churches built on pagan sites, mosques built on pre-Islamic holy ground. The Mongols sweeping across Asia, consulting shamans to identify power spots before major decisions. Different cultures and different explanation, but the same underlying recognition that certain locations possess qualities affecting human experience in reliable ways. The locations transcended interpretation because the effects were real regardless of what story you told about them. The Yamna brought their own shamanic traditions, their own methods for working with altered states. These merged with whatever fragments of older knowledge that survived. What was truly lost wasn't the places themselves. It was the accumulated understanding, the refined knowledge of exactly how to use acoustic properties, the precise timing for seasonal rituals, the detailed observations about how different conditions affected experience. The warriors who conquered brought their own knowledge systems, but the sophisticated architectural understanding, the reasons why specific geometries produce specific effects, much of this was eliminated along with the people who held it. The ancient temple builders kept creating enclosed environments designed to control sensory experience. Newgrange in Ireland, the Hypogeum in Malta, the underground galleries of Chavín de Huántar in Peru. Each features stone chambers with restricted light, cool temperatures and controlled access. Whether by design or by effect, these spaces reduced external sensory input dramatically. They created conditions that alter consciousness predictably. Modern research on sensory deprivation started in the 1950s. Remove external stimulation and put subjects in dark, quiet environments with controlled temperature, and you can see a drastic change in perception. Time distortion arrives first. Minutes feel like hours, or hours pass like minutes. The sense of duration becomes unreliable. Then, internal imagery intensifies with geometric patterns and colors. Eventually, full visual experiences happen, with eyes closed in complete darkness. The default mode network changes activity. This network maintains your sense of continuous self, your life narrative, your identity structure. In sensory deprivation, it shuts. The Chanda Yoga Upanishad says, when food is pure, mind becomes pure. When mind is pure, memory becomes firm. When memory is firm, all ties are loosened. It tells us to clear the system before dropping into depth. Ancient builders couldn't measure brain networks, but they could observe effects. Build an underground chamber, seal people inside for hours during ritual. Some chambers worked better than others, and the effective ones got copied. Ritual practice developed around these conditions. Fasting before entering, purification practices, spending extended time in darkness and silence. Then the chanting begins, the drumming, low-frequency sound in an enclosed space, your body vibrating with the walls. The Svetasvatara Upanishad describes when the five senses and the mind are still and reason itself rests in silence, then begins the path supreme. It is the silence that reveals rather than conceals. The ancient temples functioned as amplifiers. They lowered the threshold, made the extraordinary accessible to more people more reliably. The question remains, how much was intentional design versus fortunate accident? The complete answer is probably lost. Or is it? Indian temple architecture contains explicit instructions, which is something the West forgot to look for. The Shilpa Shastras, ancient architectural manuals dating back at least 2000 years, don't just describe how to build temples. They explain why specific locations, geometries, and materials matter for the structures they built. The Maya Mata, one of the principal Shilpa Shastras, describes temples as representations of the cosmos and provides detailed instructions for site selection. The text devotes entire sections to Bhupariksha, examination of the land, specifying how to test ground before construction. Walk the land, assess the soil, identify water sources, test the stone, mark favorable spots, and build there. The Manasara Shilpa Shastra provides extensive geological requirements. The text discusses underground water sources, soil composition, and rock formations as critical factors in site selection. P.K. Acharya's translation of the Manasara documents these specifications in details. Temples should be built where underground water flows, where stone quality meets specific standards, where the land possesses what the texts call prana or life energy. The Brihat Samhita, composed by Varahara Mihira in the 6th century CE, describes temple dimensions using proportional systems based on body measurements. The angula, finger width, serves as base unit. From this, precise ratios govern the height of the sanctum, the width of the chambers, the thickness of the walls. These proportional systems create relationships between dimensions that some researchers have noted correspond to acoustic resonance principles, though the texts themselves focus on proportion and structural integrity rather than explicitly discussing sound. The Agamas, texts governing temple worship across various Hindu traditions, specify which mantras to chant in which chambers. The Bija mantras, seed syllables, like Om, are assigned specific locations within temple architecture. When priests chant Om in the sanctum of a properly constructed temple, according to these specifications, the structure resonates physically. The experience is tactile, felt through the body. The materials matter as much as geometry. Granite contains quartz crystals. The Shilpa Shastras specify granite for temple constructions, particularly for the Garbhagriha, the innermost sanctum. When priests circumambulate the sanctum, their footsteps create pressure on the stone. Quartz under pressure generates electrical charge through piezoelectric effect. Millions of footsteps over centuries, constant pressure and release. Whether the builders understood piezoelectricity in modern terms or not, they selected materials with these properties. The Vastu Shastra, the broader science of architecture, describes Vastu Purusha Mandala, an energetic grid underlying every structure. The mandala consists of geometric divisions, each assigned to specific duties and purposes. Whether this grid corresponds to actual electromagnetic properties of sites remains an open question, requiring systematic study. What's documented is that grid system governed construction precisely, determining where different temple elements should be placed. The Agama texts talk about very specific rituals for temple consecration. The Kumbha Abhishekam ceremony involves elaborate procedures lasting days, Vedic chanting at specific frequencies, circumambulation in precise patterns, application of sacred substances to the stones. The ritual systematically engaged the structure through sound, repetitive motion creating pressure waves, and materials applied during consecration. The Kashi Khanda, a section of the Skanda Purana describing the sacred geography of Varanasi, explains clustering of temples along the Ganges. The texts describe how temples should be built where the river flows over stone, where earth rises in particular formations, where water springs from below. Modern geological surveys of Varanasi confirm temples do concentrate at riverside locations, where underground aquifers meet surface water, where granite bedrock rises close to the surface. The temple bell, the ghanta, receives detailed specifications in various agamas: size, weight, metal composition with specific ratios of copper, tin, and zinc, shape, and striking point. All follow formulas designed to produce particular sonic qualities. Temple bells produce complex tones with components throughout the audible spectrum, including frequencies in the range that research has shown affects human neural processing. Its purpose is to awaken the sadhak to presence, to get him here in the now. Pradakshina or circumambulation is another interesting practice. The texts specify clockwise movement around the sanctum, keeping the deity on your right. This creates consistent directional movement of hundreds or thousands of people daily over centuries. The repetitive pattern generates mechanical stress on the structure. The rhythmic movement, sustained over extended periods, induces altered states in practitioners. Some scholars describe temple constructions in these texts as yantric architecture. A yantra is a geometric pattern designed to focus consciousness. The temple functions as a three-dimensional yantra, its architecture guiding awareness through specific sequences. Enter through the eastern gate, progress through increasingly smaller, darker chambers. Finally reach the Garbhagriha, the womb chamber, where darkness, confined space, and architectural properties combine to create distinctive experiential condition. The Aparijita Pricha, an architectural dialogue text, explores connections between temple structure and human experience. The text discusses how temple design should create specific effects on those who enter, addressing both physical construction and experiential outcomes. Traditional interpretations connect this to concepts of body-temple correspondence found throughout Hindu and Buddhist traditions. The Kamakigama, a Shaivite text governing temple constructions and worship, describes outcomes expected from properly constructed temples. Traditional teachings held that temples built according to proper specifications would benefit those who entered them, healing, calming, awakening spiritual understanding. What makes Indian temple architecture remarkable is the documentation. Unlike Mediterranean temples where we must infer intention from effects, Indian texts state purposes explicitly. The tradition maintained unbroken transmission for millennia. Master builders, sthapatis, passed knowledge through family lineages. Each generation learned construction techniques with their underlying principles. The knowledge stayed alive because the tradition stayed alive. Sthapati families still exist in South India, maintaining aspects of this tradition, though the comprehensive understanding has diminished. Studies of temple acoustics by researchers like Subhash Kak and others have confirmed that Garbhagriha chambers do amplify specific frequencies. Geological surveys verify underground water and quartz-bearing rocks at numerous temple sites. The Tirumantiram, a Tamil Shaivite text composed by Tirumalar around the 7th to 9th century CE, explores relationships between body, temple, and consciousness. The texts contain verses describing the body as a temple of the divine, drawing explicit parallels between human physiology and sacred architecture. The concept of correspondence between microcosm and macrocosms runs throughout Indian architectural texts.